Remember searching singlemuslim.com proudly sponsors Single Muslim Live.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode of Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by singlemuslim.com. I'm Fahima Mohammed, your host, as well as your relationship and couples coach. I am so happy to have you all viewing and streaming from wherever you are tonight, whether it's on Sky Channel 752, on Twitter or Facebook. Here from British Muslim TV, a very, very warm welcome. We love having the shows and we love all your interactions. Please do keep sending them through, whether it's now live or during the week. We do get all your emails, your comments, your queries, and your questions. The show is here to provide a service for yourself to make sure that we raise, awareness. We raise a lot of the topics and issues that are your concerns. And tonight, if you want to join us in the conversation live, you can do so by dialing into the studio directly to speak to myself or my guest by calling in 01924231083. Please do ask the bill payer's permission as standard network rates do apply. However, if you feel that you want to message us, and you can do so anonymously as well as for no cost, that could be on our WhatsApp service, and that number is 07585835150. We have a topic tonight which is really, really prevalent, especially with what's happening in our community with a huge amount of divorce. We talk about that, but we need to talk about the dynamics that happens afterwards in the household when we have people who are single but with children trying to enter into a new relationship. What is that like? We know that relationships on a whole is very, very challenging. But what does it mean when you have children, whether both parties do or one does, depending on the age, depending on the circumstances, depending on what stage you are in your life, depending on what ages your children are? There's so much to discuss tonight. I would love for you to send in your questions. We will answer it. And obviously, we have our wonderful guest tonight to help us in this conversation, and I would love for you to welcome her. She is Safia Haque. Assalamu alaikum, Safia.
Wa alaikum salam, Fahima. I'm so happy to be here with you tonight.
I am extremely happy to have you today, especially with your profession, with your background, knowing that you deal with this specifically. I really am grateful for your time. So please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a parenting coach, and I'm really passionate about helping all those amazing parents out there to make it easier. And I mainly focus on taking, my mission is to take one parent per household through the psychological switch, also known the inside-out paradigm, which really makes parenting, much more joyful, easier, not taking things so personally, and allowing the family to just be together and in that balanced way like we all want to be. So yeah, I really care about making life easier and more joyful for parents, because it's a hard job being a parent today, I think.
Absolutely. I love the way you make it sound, and the fact that, you want to create the space where people are actually enjoying their families, even though we know that raising children is so difficult when it's from their own parents, let alone after divorce and when they're thinking of a new relationship. So I'm going to be real tonight. It is a real challenge. And it's from so many angles that there comes challenges, whether it's from the parent who has the child, whether it's the actual potential spouse who is not having any children, and they're entering into a relationship where the other person has children. Then you have the children themselves who are not absolutely comfortable or happy or just quite anxious as to what it's going to be like to have a new person in that household. Because it's not just having a friend, it's a full-time job, it's a role model. There's so much to discuss tonight. So when it comes to someone, firstly, let's talk about the two people, the adults, who one of them or both of them may have children, but at least one does. Now, what would be the actual stages and questions that you would ask your potential spouse when you are entering into a relationship for, marriage and you've got children? What would be the kind of things that you need to be aware of when you are trying to enter into that relationship? How would you sort of, guide somebody into going into a relationship when they have children?
Yeah, I think the first thing to start off with is it's often not the children that are the first issue that maybe needs to be discussed, but actually the commitment between the two people who are entering that relationship, and they being very clear that they want to make it work, and then they together giving that loving, guiding relationship to, that loving guidance and leadership to the children, that they are the responsible adults and they will take care of whatever challenges, whatever needs come up between them for the children. So I think it's often not the first issue or the stop that get in the way in terms of what's going to happen with the children, but it's more about the two people being very clear about what are the roles going to be. Because I think when two people are entering a relationship that already have been previously married and then lived alone, they might have been performing the task of the mum and the dad and the provider and all the other responsibilities that come with it. But when you're entering into, again, a relationship, a partnership where responsibilities are going to be shared, I think the first important step would be to define the roles very clearly. Who's going to be the provider, or are both going to provide together? Who's going to be taking responsibility mainly for looking after the kids, let's say if they were young, and like also in terms of how has their life been structured until now, and how is that going to fit together in the new setup, in the new relationship. Because I think one of the worst mindsets, regardless whether there are children or not, or you're getting into a new relationship, is like that you somehow are going to change the other partner to according to how you want them to be, and that whole thing that if that expectation that they have to adjust to, the adjustments have to be huge, and the changes and the let's say if we talk about parenting styles, that there has to be one sort of parenting style for things to work, but it doesn't have to be like that. We can have our own parenting styles and our own way, and still live together. So those are some of the main, I believe, discussions that need to be held very honestly before entering a relationship.
Yes. Absolutely. You've made it very clear, and it's so true. You've highlighted so much as you were speaking. Just to sort of recap, it's more about understanding what is the intention of the two people coming together, and knowing that they do have children, they have had a past, they do already have some sort of structure in place. There is already a dynamic between, the existing family, and that needs to be discussed to see if there can be some sort of compromise, or there has to be some sort of maybe adjustments or changes, or whatever it may be, even if it means you talking about the finance and responsibilities of taking care of the children. That is so important. And I don't think we actually have this kinds of conversation. It's more about, we like each other, we want to be with each other, and then let's see, when we're going to tell the children kind of thing. And it's absolutely so much more than that. So I'm so happy that you've actually raised this, because I think, especially in our Muslim community, we can be blindsided thinking that once we finish a relationship, it's just so easy to just or it should be such a priority to just go into another relationship because those children need it or you need it. But actually, there's so much more to be discussed. Do you feel that those two people that are coming together need to even discuss maybe their past relationship as to why it didn't work out? Have they grown or learned from it? Do you think that's something that maybe needs to be discussed, or do you think that should be wiped under the slate and try and, build something completely new? What's your thoughts on this?
I think it needs to be discussed to a certain extent. I don't believe that the other partner needs to know all the details and the ins and outs of it, but I do believe they generally, from what I've seen, people do discuss, okay, my relationship ended because of X, Y, and Z, and I believe, that can be just a simple, honest conversation, and the other partner, there should be an acceptance that is the truth from both sides, because again, trust is going to be one of the key things in a new relationship, the trusting each other. But just I'd like to share a brief thing about the case study where a client, she got married again, and what we just discussed before, it wasn't really clearly defined in terms of who's going to take financial responsibility and where they're going to live, and all that was not discussed beforehand, and it started creating problems in the relationship. And one of the other keys was how the previous relationships ended, and how there was also some legal cases still going on, which again created another sort of added challenge. So I think it's really key that there is some sort of closure from the past before we enter into that new relationship, because
that is so true. Safia, we are going to come back and we're going to discuss this, because now we're getting into the real nitty-gritty of the challenges. And before you go into it even deeper, I want to obviously, basically check in with everyone that you are there with us, making sure that you take notes. These are really important discussions that we're having tonight. And if you do want to take part, please do send in your questions and queries, or call us. We are going into a short break. Please do stay tuned. We're going to be having some more questions for Safia. She's going to go into it much more deeper. And inshallah, we will see you in a short while. Don't go anywhere. Stay exactly where you are. And I will see you in a few moments. Take care.
With 3 million members searching, SingleMuslim.com proudly sponsors Single Muslim Live.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. We're having a really, really intense conversation with such an important topic about entering into a relationship when you have children. And it's so vital, it's so crucial for your family in order for you to have that successful relationship, to understand how the structure is, how the dynamics are going to be. And, with me tonight, we have Safia, which is so important to have guests like her to actually highlight some of the real case studies that actually goes on, especially in our Muslim communities, so that we are bringing you some real life studies, real, research, real cases, that what happens, that we can learn, we can grow, we can develop, we can even hopefully not make the same mistakes. So as you were discussing before, Safia, when it comes to one of your case studies, and because certain things were not discussed, and obviously there's sometimes, we cannot wait for that closure. We cannot wait for that case to end. There are still ongoing issues, for example, legally in the matter of divorce, or, trying to find custody of who's going to take in charge of the children. But in that space, you might find a potential spouse. And are they mature enough to handle all of that, as well as taking on a new family? So what was it that you were going to talk about, which are the challenges that people are facing today when they have children and when they're entering into a relationship? Can you please continue?
Yeah, so the challenges are like you said, yeah, sometimes there's ongoing legal cases because they drag on for years and years, and it's really quite has an effect on the whole family. But in this case study I was talking about, there was actually the beautiful thing about this case study was that the children were really attached to the new stepdad that came into their family, and they in this case they were even more attached than to their biological father, because the stepdad was taking care of them, he was kind to them, he was loving to them, and that's what it's really about, like being able to have those relationships despite all the other external challenges that were going on. And just getting back to in terms of how children fit into this, I believe that if there is very clear guidelines and boundaries from the partners that are coming together, children actually are very adaptable, they're very bulletproof, and they're very dynamic, and they can really adapt to new relationships very quickly if they're receiving that love and that kindness and that leadership from the parents. But yeah, in terms of like before entering into any new relationship, having those bigger discussions, like we said before, like even where we're going to live and how we're going to set up the roles in the family. And I just wanted to touch on briefly in terms of why did blended families or...
Well, before you go there, we do actually
Yeah.
have a question, Safia. It
Oh,
says,
great.
Assalamu alaikum. Mashallah, always amazing, the topics, and they managed to tune in early today. So thank you so much for that. And I do appreciate you joining us. We have a sister saying, what steps can be taken to introduce the spouse to the children in a halal context prior to marrying them in the first place? I think that's a very, very good question.
That's a really good question. What do you think about that, Fahima?
Okay, my opinion is that as much as you want to introduce the children, and you need to obviously do that in a context where it's halal, like you said before, I think it's very important that the two people do have that sort of relationship in place first. And that has to be strong and solid. And also, it does depend on the children's age. We can't just generalize children. Maybe when they're younger, it may differ. Maybe when they're older, they might need to be told even quicker, because at the end of the day, they may be able to handle it much better. It could go the other way as well. But that's what I'm saying, when we're talking on the show, I just want to make you aware that it's very much generalizing. When you really want to get real assistance and advice and guidance, you do need to seek one-to-one, because at the end of the day, every single family household dynamic and story is very different, and it may not apply to you. So just to be aware that we are just generalizing, and we're talking from the many cases that we do address. But these are the considerations. It's lovely that when you are finding a partner and you are in that relationship of moving forward, that you would like to introduce the children. But I think before even introducing the children, the two people need to be quite solid. And then the parent needs to also have a conversation with that child alone, or know them well enough to understand what would be the challenges and try and preempt it so that they can be prepared with any sort of negative comeback. Because, that could also be disheartening, knowing that your child is resistant at first, and you need to be able to be patient and wait, or be able to explain how this process may be, and not to scare them that it's so sudden, just because you've known your partner for so long, that all of a sudden they've got to just now enter it and, into their lives really quickly. So there's a lot to consider here. And it's not a very easy question, even though it's a brilliant question. It's not a very easy one to answer. But thank you so much for sending that in. I do appreciate that. What's your thoughts, Safia?
Yeah, just that was really good. The only thing I think I can add on is, like, I think it would be really helpful for a single parent that's looking to get married, to have an ongoing open conversation with their children about that idea and about that reality. So it's not like a shock to, let's say, even younger children that, oh, okay, I never realized that you might get married again, or what does that even mean, or what kind of impact would that have on us? But like to really talk to them about that, that's a completely normal, natural, very much in line with our deen actually idea. And that's why I was also going to say, in terms of like, if we look at our beloved Prophet ﷺ, actually the first marriage he did was with someone who had a child already and had been previously married, which I think is really beautiful. And he was actually the one who revived that sunnah of that, like that it's completely normal, natural for people to get married again if they have been divorced or widowed or whatever the circumstances are. And,
sorry to interrupt you, but it's funny that you say that, because I obviously agree with what you're saying. We have come from, faith that obviously advises this, it sort of, represents in that way. But looking at today's society, knowing how people are in our Muslim community, that is one thing that people do not choose. And especially when it comes to women who are divorced with children, it is the hardest thing for them to do is to find a spouse that's willing to accept it. And then sometimes we are told as women with children that we have to maybe step down a little bit in our standards or our demands, because it's kind of like a second class looking at women with children, to say that we need to be grateful that someone is actually coming to even, take on your child. Not to say that, you can't do it yourself. You've been doing it for so long. And, it's really interesting that you say that. And I think we need to wake up that as much as we say and we claim to be in a particular way, but, we don't follow in that way. We are also brought up in society, whether it's in the Western society or even in the East, or even in amongst our Muslim communities, that we want this nucleus family, and anything beyond that is second class, is, not that great. It's not really recommended if a mother knows that her son or daughter was to marry someone with children, even if they themselves are divorced. They would not. Do you think it's much easier for men than it is with women as well? Because the women normally are the ones that are living with their children, whereas the men not necessarily are. And that is also another issue that we do not raise, the fact that, it's kind of more of, I wouldn't say burden, but it's more of a challenge for women who are, entering into relationships when they have children, because they actually do come with that package. They do come with that actual dynamic, whereas a man who's divorced with children may only have that part-time. So how do you sort of like advise the Muslim community, as much as you've said what you've said with regards to our faith and what we have to do, but we're not following in those ways, and we certainly don't recommend it. We don't want it. That's like a last resort. So, how do we change those kind of mindsets?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's a big question. And how do we change the mindsets one by one? And that's the only way, like waking up one by one. And the next, our part now is to raise this generation not with that mindset, to actually stop this from repeating itself. Talking to our children from very early on about this idea that this is not part of our deen, that that there's something wrong with people who have that have been divorced or widowed and have children and they want to get married again. There's like all that stigmatism and all that cultural baggage that has been dragged along for a long time. It has to change, and the way it's going to change is that our generation is going to not accept that anymore, and us as parents raising the next generation to also not accept that anymore. And that's the only way I see it moving forward. It's got to be one by one family by one family by one family, and unfortunately, it might be some slow progress, but it's got to be some progress there. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I'm so glad that we're talking about this tonight. Again, it's such a serious topic. As much as we know there's so much divorce happening, we need to understand now, what do we do afterwards? We cannot leave families in that particular situation where they are just left by themselves to either play both roles, or if they're going to take on another relationship, then they're looked upon as, we can't demand, or we can't, have certain things happen to us because we don't deserve it, because, we've come out from one relationship to the second relationship. We have to be even more compromising. Yes, there will be more adjustments. Yes, there will be more compromises, but not to the extent where you're not of value and you're not of worth. That's the difference. And I think we need to understand that. And we need to talk to our family members. We need to speak to our community leaders, as well as the community and society as a whole, to understand that this is now becoming the norm, and it shouldn't be such a difficult situation, and it could be a smooth transition. Again, I'm loving the conversation. We are coming into a short break, and we will continue with further discussion. I hope that you join us and stay tuned. We will be having more questions for Safia. If you have some, please do send them through and I will read them out for you. But I will see you in a few moments. Take care.
With 3 million members searching, SingleMuslim.com proudly sponsors Single Muslim Live.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. I get very passionate about these subjects because it's close to my heart with all my clients that we have here that are calling us on the show, emailing us. I really do appreciate all of your interaction, your engagement. I do try and respond to the emails from all of your challenges that you do send through. And I just want to say thank you so much for that. And even the questions that are coming in. And we do actually have another question, Safia. I think it's slightly similar to what we had before, but let's see. It says, a question for Safia and Fahima. For any lady entering a new relationship when she has children, what's a good way for a young Muslim man to approach a lady if she is with a child? So basically, if you feel that, there's a gentleman who wants to approach a mother, right, who is single, how would you go about advising a man to do that? Because sometimes she may not be in the right headspace. How would you know that she's in the right headspace? And if you feel that you want to approach it, how would you advise a man to be able to do that?
That's a really good question. I think first of all, I would advise him to look in what kind of setting he has met her, and probably approach some family member or friend first to inquire about what is her interest. Is she looking? Is she not looking? And take it from there, really. Yeah,
brilliant. No, that's so true. Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you, because you don't know where people's situations are generally, and especially if they're a mother, if they've just come out of a relationship, are they even ready to get into another one? You don't want to offend anyone, or you don't want to feel that, even a lot of the times people are like, well, I want to marry you, like as if to say, we pity you and we're doing you a favor. No, it doesn't work like that. So you need to approach it in the right way. Absolutely. Yeah. We do have another question. Thank you for sending them through. It's like coming in quite fast now. It is almost Valentine's Day, alhamdulillah, for some of us that do actually want to, celebrate. What is a good gift for a single mum? A mum who married into a man who never had children. So this is someone who probably, is probably courting, probably for prospective marriage. The man doesn't have children, but he's obviously interested in the woman and probably in that process of getting into a relationship. Now he wants to give her a gift for Valentine's Day. What would be a gift for a single mum?
Wow, I'm thrown off there. What do you think, Fahima?
Well, you know what? A lot of us may give gifts which we think is what they require, maybe for their children, because it's sweet that we're considering the child, and that is nice to a certain extent. Or we find that in relationships, we have, husbands that buy something that is to do with the kitchen, right? But at the end of the day, don't do that. Don't do that, please. Don't do that, okay? Yeah. As much as it's a really good gesture, she's her own self. She's someone who also is an individual that, wants to be seen as an individual who is not in those sort of like, traits and jobs that she does, the many jobs that a mother personally does, like, a carer, a tutor, a teacher, a cleaner, whatever it may be. So you don't need to add to it. Look at her as a young person would, and maybe as, something that she would enjoy for herself, that you see her in that light. So whatever it may be, I'm sure with the ideas that I've just said right now, make it slightly personal and make it for her. Yeah. If you want to add to it to maybe give something alongside for her child as well, fair enough. But I know that a lot of the times it's always a gift for a woman that is to remind her that she's going to use this in the kitchen, or to remind her she's going to be doing something else with her children. And she doesn't need that reminder. Yeah. So yeah, if you're thinking of a gift, try and do it where it's more personalized and it's just for her. I think that would be quite sweet, that maybe she can feel a little bit more special. So yeah, definitely. So before the break, we were talking about how children may be even finding it very difficult to accept that they're parents. And I know from even some of the case studies that I deal with, that even when they are adult children, especially boys or their mums, we do find there's a lot of attachment. There's a lot of protectiveness, especially if there's a breakdown in the marriage. And then you find a young boy that's grown up and all he's known is him, even if the father's involved in the house, but he's the man of the house. And to have another man in that house is very, very difficult. And some people do not like it. How would you advise that mother and that son to overcome the fact that, there may be another man in the house, but it doesn't take away that role? And at the same time, how would you go about, guiding that sort of relationship, the new relationship to come in? Because the boy is adamant, no one comes near my mum. What do you do in that situation? Because this is a real case study.
Yeah, I mean, I will have to think about that one for a minute. But I do have another case study, which is actually the opposite, where the mum got divorced when she was very young, and her youngest son was the one that stayed with her, and she sort of leaned on him as the man of the house. Yet it was now that young man is grown up and he's married himself, and he talks about how challenging that was and how difficult it was, that his mom did miss being in a relationship, and she felt lonely and she needed that sort of male figure, masculine figure in her life, and she leaned on her son, and how it felt that he had too much responsibility and he wished that his mom did get married again. So I do know of that side. So again, I would share with that mom and that young man, talk to them very openly about realistically that he's gonna move on and he's gonna have his own life, and his mom will be left without having that support and being in a relationship like that. So again, talking to them about it's not about you and her and how you ideally want it, but about looking at reality and taking care of everybody's needs, because in the end it would be a quite selfish move from that young man to stop his mother from having that blessing of a relationship, of having someone to support her, because even being a son, you can't fulfill all the needs and have that responsibility for your mother. So it would be a very open conversation about that, and yes, there might be disagreement and ups and downs, but if both parties are adamant to come to a resolution, then definitely a resolution can be found. And again, I would definitely advise to have lots of support and outside of family, like someone who has a clear mind and can really take you forward in each step on the way, rather than having to rely on family here and there that might not even know how to help you in that situation. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's so true. And I'm not trying to say that, children that actually, have either even lost, it's not just about divorce. People that have been married for many years, they've actually lost their partners. Yeah. And the children are not used to the fact that, after so many years being brought up in a household with mum and dad, and now, either, especially if the dad, for example, has passed on and the mum is left, and, you think as a son that you're there for your mum, and you most definitely are. We're not trying to say that feeling that you have is not relevant, and it's definitely something that, should be considered. It is tough to see your mum move on. It is tough to see your dad move on, but especially for a boy to see their mum with another man. And, we need to validate that. But if the mum knows that, that is something that she wants, there needs to be consistent, continuous conversation about this. And if there is even a potential, sometimes just talking about it isn't enough. When there is people that you have in your life that you're already involved with, maybe when that person is ready to meet your family, then that can actually bring something else. Because no matter how much we are resistant as children, adult children, and we're never going to, get close to anyone else. No one's going to replace my dad or my mom. It's not about replacing. It's an addition. It's an extension. So we need to use different language, different terminology. It's an extra support in the house. It's an extra family member that you are also bringing into the household, which you are giving comfort, and they're going to give comfort and support. So we need to have different kind of language, different kind of outlook, because I think we do look at things as black and white, like they're going to come in, they're going to take over, they're going to tell me what to do, or they're going to step on my shoes and this and the other, which can be true. And we did actually have another question before we get to the break. Hopefully we can get this in. Many women end up in a second abusive marriage after escaping from one. What are your thoughts on this? Because obviously when we're moving from one relationship to another, sometimes there are repeating cycles. So how would you avoid that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. How to avoid that? I think the one way I see how to avoid that is that once you've come out of one relationship, give yourself time and get yourself support to get to a really good place, so you're not stuck in that same, if I say it, same energy and same sort of, you're not stuck in the past. You've really moved on, and I do your check the other partners thoroughly as possible before you get involved. Get family members involved that know how to do that. I mean, it's a tough one, and nobody wants to end up in a second relationship that ends up in that sort of scenarios. Yeah,
absolutely. I do feel that we need to do our due diligence. It does start, like you said, with the actual individual, that they have to heal, because when they heal, then they themselves do not repeat patterns. They themselves do not choose the same kind of partners. And if there are red flags, they are more likely to be aware. We're never going to grow unless we actually learn from the past. It's not about regret, but we have to learn from it, no matter how traumatic, no matter how painful. And inshallah, we do know as humans, we can actually better ourselves through challenges. That's what it's about. We need to remember that. It's not about having no challenge. It's about learning through them. And, when you talk to professionals, that can definitely be done. Again, we're coming to another break. It's going past so quickly, but I hope you do join us, because we have got another section to go through. Make sure that you stay tuned. We will be meeting with more questions with Safia, and I hope to have you join us soon.
With 3 million members members searching, singlemuslim.com proudly sponsors Single Muslim Live.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by singlemuslim.com. We're here on the final part. Again, it's gone by so quickly. I do appreciate you all staying tuned and staying with us and watching and sending in your messages. I really do love the interaction. The engagement is absolutely phenomenal and I do appreciate it. Thank you so much for everyone that is participating with us, joining in. And, you know, at the end of the day, like I said, this conversation is only to have us be enlightened so that we have, you know, challenges that we can face together and go through some of the techniques and some of the awareness and insights so that we can actually have better relationships regardless of what the situation is. And tonight, obviously, we're talking about going into a relationship with children. And Safia, you've given us so much food for thought already. Now, I know the dynamics of being in a relationship when you are having children, and it's so much to be involved with regards to your different parenting style. The other one has, you know, their own children. Also, the children from different families have to mix and they don't necessarily like each other or they don't get along. And now they're new siblings. That's another whole topic in itself as well, to make sure that the children blend and they actually get along well. But the other thing before we get into that was there still has to be consideration for the ex, the biological parent. Now, I know that when we enter into a new relationship, when you have a new partner and, you know, you're sitting together now, we're in the house under one roof, there is still rights that are, you know, imposed upon the child for their biological parent, as well as the parent for their biological child. Do you think there should be interaction if there was some sort of relationship, that if you're introducing your children into your family dynamic, do you think that the ex should also be involved? What's your thoughts on that?
That's a really good one. I believe there should be very clear boundaries in terms of with the ex, because that keeps things clean. And from what I've seen in terms of talking to real families, that when there's clear boundaries, like, you know, okay, at the weekend, the children are going to go there and this is how it works. And or maybe you've already had a previous setup. So I think it's really wise to continue with that setup and not intermingle and try to introduce people and things like that. Just have very clear boundaries, because just from talking to people, I know it can really spark emotions and reactions and taking things very personally, and not so nice dynamics start happening. So clear boundaries, keep the routines as they are, be accommodating, yet have your clear boundaries.
I think it's really important what you've said. And I think to add to that is to make sure you have respect and know your rights and responsibilities. As much as you probably want to also show that you are in a new relationship, you're better than before. There might be a bit of competition. There might be a bit of, you know, some sort of, you know, one up against each other, trying to, like, you know, do it, even if it's not intentional or subconsciously. The main thing I know when I actually coach couples, especially when they're after a relationship from a previous one, is to remember it is not just about you. It is to consider your children first. They still love both parents and they are still, you know, adjusting to the system of you being in love with someone new and bringing in someone new. And as much as it, you know, you need to move on in life, you know, you as adults have made that choice and you have some sort of choice, or even if you don't have that choice, you are mature enough to be able to handle it. But it's the children that you need to put first. And I always say that if you put the children first, you will have respect for your ex, you will have respect for each other, you will consider certain, you know, communication skills, you will work on yourself, and you will also have daily family meetings. You will also make sure you check in with your child continuously. Even if they're young and they're growing up, they're going to go through different stages and phases in their life where they're going to switch in their mind. What they even felt before, they may not feel even in a few weeks or months or years later. So you need to constantly have that relationship and that bond so that you do not make them feel that someone else is taking over or is coming in between even you and that, relationship that you have with your own child, or they are replacing that biological parent. So there's a lot to consider. And there is a process and there is a structure. And yes, there should be boundaries. But I think if you are doing something not just for yourself, but you're considering your child's future and you're trying to be, a person that's going to represent morals and values and your actual core beliefs, then yeah, that's when you will get it right. And even with that, there's going to be challenges, and do speak to professionals to actually maybe get you in check if you need to. You need to have someone hold you accountable. Sometimes, having family members is fine, but there can also be some bias and judgment depending on whose side that they're on. And they may not even do it again where they mean to. But, to be fair, because there's too much detrimental things that are happening in our family households today. And like I said, the reason why I'm passionate about the show, passionate about relationships, because our Muslim community is strong when your household is strong. So if we want to build strong community, strong society, it starts with your home. And just because you've overcome or you've come through a challenge doesn't mean it cannot be still continued, whether it's in a different dynamic, in a healthy way. Now, that's something that you do need to consider, whoever's watching, whoever's considering. If you are in the situation, we do need to make sure that we take care of those children. Their future, their generation has to be, make sure that, we're going to not repeat cycles. You can come out of a relationship and it doesn't mean that it's going to be detrimental. Yes, there are statistics and psychologists that do say that it's best not to, but we can't help these things that happen. And if it's not about the divorce or someone that's passed on that creates the bad relationship for your children or the bad future for your children, it's you. You need to, step up. You need to learn skills that maybe you didn't have before. And that's what's going to get you to have that dynamic in your household with a new partner, new siblings, new children, new family, whatever it may be, and it can still work. And I promise you that can be done. Now, can you give us some strategies that you use for families that are living together with blended and extended family members that you feel that from your coaching that can be useful for tonight?
Yeah, definitely. I think in terms of when you come together, obviously with two new parents, parenting styles, I think it's not reasonable to try to change each other's parenting style and bring about in the change like that, because remember, like you said, we're talking about the children. They're used to that one parent being in their life mainly and looking after them in a certain way, and when then another parent now is involved as well, it can get a bit tricky, because I've had case studies where moms are very, very upset where they've entered a new relationship and they feel that their partner is disciplining their child, and they find it really hard to watch, and it affects the whole dynamic of the relationship. So I would really recommend that, if again, having very clear honest discussion about this before, how is it going to work, and doing it in a respectful way, consulting each other in terms of how you would deal with the kids, who's responsible for setting what sort of rules and boundaries, and obviously having family meetings about it. How are we going to take this to the next step? Who's going to be in charge, and how are we going to move forward together? So it's all about having that communication and realizing that there is no wrong or right parenting style in a general sense. If we're talking generally, everybody has their own way of thinking, and we all live in separate realities, and having that sort of insight into that and realization allows us to be more accepting and dynamic, and not taking things personally, if we within the household make things about ourselves and take it very personally, can be damaging for the overall environment. So it's all about keeping the bigger picture in mind, having that communication, having some clear set rules that everybody is happy with, really helps to keep those family dynamics in balance and harmony in the home.
Absolutely. The other thing I also want to say is that, you know, at the end of the day, I understand that parents want to give the best for their children, but giving the best for their children is also being a leader, an influencer, and actually a strong individual. Just because you know that you've moved on to another relationship, it doesn't mean that your child also holds that as leverage. Because I know a lot of children might take advantage over that, and then they can even get in between your new relationship. So when you say boundaries, when you say discipline, that should still apply, because it shouldn't be your children that are the drivers in the house. No matter how much you love them, you are still the parent. And also, if a new member comes into that family, there still should be respect. So even if that child doesn't like the new partner, and I know there's some very, very dismissive children out there that will use it as an excuse to be rude, to be not accepting. And, you know, then the parents are like, you know, we just got to leave them. They're teenagers. No such thing. Right? At the end of the day, you know, rules have to be there regardless, and you should have respect regardless. So I know that a lot of parents are really struggling with this. So we have come to the end of the show so quickly, and I just want to make sure that you have the last word. We have just under a minute. If you could just tell me a little bit about where can people reach you. So inshallah, if anyone wants to talk further with you one-to-one, please have your final say and also share your details for us, please.
Yeah, if anybody would like to speak anything, speak about anything parenting related, relationship related further, they can contact me at coachsafia.com/gift, and there is some free training there to get started as well. And email me safia@coachsafia.com, and I'll be very happy to get back to you. But it's been amazing to be here, and really feel very passionate about helping parents out there.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for being with us tonight, Safia. Thank you everyone for watching. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate everyone that's viewing tonight, who's streaming from wherever you are. Inshallah, we'll be back next week with another topic. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your questions. We really appreciate it. Please do keep sending them through. And inshallah, we will see you in another episode next week. Same time, same place. Have a really good night. Salam.